Stugotz, I don't know whether or not you have heard some of the sound to emerge from Dana White getting in front of microphones, and I haven't seen a whole lot of what I'm witnessing here before covering sports, Stugotz, because you rarely have a situation where a very powerful white man hits a woman on camera and then sort of decides his own punishment and comes out and talks and is the first one to talk publicly about this because all of his bosses are afraid to talk about it because he doesn't really have any bosses. And I know many of you, I should probably tell you right now that if you want, you should check in with the program in about 20 or 30 minutes if you don't want woke talk or whatever it is I do with seriousness around here, as I tried last week to point out to you that there were only a couple of people covering this correctly, fairly, the way that it's supposed to be covered. And a lot of excuses were being made about the sewer, about, God almighty, the number of people I heard. Equality, self-defense, you wanted equality. And even Dana White came out yesterday. It's like, please stop apologizing for me. Please stop excusing me. He had to tell the cavemen in his audience, somebody who spoke at the Republican National Convention, somebody bald, white, and in power, had to tell his cavemen, back off, I'm wrong. Back off, protectors of me, I'm wrong. ESPN, Endeavor, they're all mad at me because I'm wrong. But what are you going to do? Suspend me? It just hurts the business. It just hurts the money. I should have left in 2016. I've got $1 million limit at blackjack in Las Vegas that I want. They won't give it to me. I want to bet $1 million. I don't need any of this. What are you going to do? Suspend me? He's apologetic, but he decides his own punishment. I've never seen it.
It's kind of crazy. He does have bosses, I guess, in that he has shareholders, right? And like if they decide they no longer want to be a part, or they sell their stock and the stock goes down, those technically are his bosses. But you're right. It's odd to have a guy who kind of makes his own punishment and doesn't really have to answer to anybody. Like, imagine if this were Roger Goodell.
I don't want to go too far down the path. I tried to point it out to you last week, and now what you're getting, Stugotz, because I know many of you are tired of race talk at every turn, and Lord knows you're tired of it with me for a long, long time. But Jamel Hill is writing, hey, Stephen A. Smith, what are you doing on ESPN going so soft at Dana White as a whole lot of black people are noticing, Stugotz, at a difficult time in America? Hey, the white guy's just going to slap a woman on video and it's going to be good? He gets to decide his own punishment? Like, you're pressing on some privilege there that I have not seen a whole lot in sports when it breaks down on racial lines, because every time a black person is in trouble, there's a great deal of zealotry around what the criticism is, including from Stephen A. Smith. And so when black people are looking for, hey, who's going to stand up to this? This ain't right. Like Endeavor, no comment. ESPN, no comment. UFC, no comment. Time Warner on the slap fighting show, they push it a week. No comment, no comment, no comment. Ari Emanuel, no comment. Everybody goes running. The white guy's on video slapping a woman. He's not defending it. Why is his audience defending it so much that he's like, again, spoke at the Republican National Convention. He's like, guys, back off. I'm wrong. Like, how is that happening quietly in 2023?
Well, he's saying he's wrong, but he's also saying, I'm not going to punish myself. I get no punishment. And you're asking what?
Stugotz, here's what he actually said.
Okay.
He offers up an actual punishment that he is suffering.
What should the repercussions be? You tell me. I take 30 days off? How does that hurt me? I mean, I told you guys when we were going through COVID could last 10 years. I could set it out, and it's much like COVID, actually. You know, me leaving hurts the company, hurts my employees, hurts the fighters. Doesn't hurt me. I could have left in 2016. Do I need to reflect? No, I don't need to reflect. The next morning when I woke up, you know what I mean? I've been against this. I've owned this. I'm telling you that I'm wrong. We've had plenty of discussions internally with Ari, ESPN, nobody's happy. Nobody's happy about this, you know. Neither am I. But it happened. And I have to deal with it. And what is my punishment? Here's my punishment. I got to walk around for however long I live. Is it 10.4 years or is it another 25 years? This is how I'm labeled now. My other punishment is that, you know, I'm sure a lot of people, whether it be media, fighters, friends, Acquaintances who had respect for me might not have respect for me now. I mean, there's a lot of things that I'm going to have to deal with for the rest of my life that are way more of a punishment than what? I take a 30-day, 60-day absence. That's not a punishment to me. The punishment is that I did it.
He's not wrong about that. As it relates to him, the greatest problem
But you can say
here
that about
for him-
all his fighters.
You could say it about anybody in Scandal, that one of the greatest shames, if you're not incarcerated, is that you have to live with the indignity of people making that moment who you are and losing respect for you. But that's a shame that befalls everyone who gets a great deal of much more criticism in the media and consequences than what it is that Dana White has suffered. Again, the greatest consequence, he's right, the greatest consequence is his shame.
Right.
Because it can't be, they delayed slap fight as a league for a week. That can't be the greatest punishment to this.
But to your original question of why his fan base is defending him, maybe not defending him, but supporting him a little bit is...
No.
Well, Dan, do you agree if he walks away for 30 to 60 days, the sport is weaker?
No, Stugotz. The sport can function just fine without him. The business would take a hit, and businesses often should take a hit when punishing powerful people for bad behavior, with shareholders or others. Don't tell me they haven't been defending him, because this particular caveman community, it's not all of you, it might not even be the majority of you, been fighting with these knuckle draggers for 15 years. And there is a lot of she hit him first. There is a lot of he was defending himself. Let a woman come to me. That Dana White had to put his voice on. Please stop defending me, you idiots. Like, do not defend this.
I know, and it's gross, and they are gross for defending it. But what did you expect? Like, you've been following the sport as close as anyone for years. What did you think his fan base was going to do? Like,
I think that people fundamentally, I want them to be decent.
okay.
Like, I don't expect...
We all do, Dan.
But I do not expect... Even he said he was surprised, Stugotz. He was not expecting. Why is there an outpouring of defense for me? I am not a victim. But let a black man do that on video and see if he's someone who gets a lot of defense and ends up saying, please, guys, stop defending me. Because it won't work that way. And you've got, like I'm telling you, the racial element of this is powerful, as black people have to watch. Oh, this guy's going to skate. Like, this guy's going to skate totally, where he's looking us in the face with his privilege and saying, you're not punishing me by making me go away. I'll go to Cabo and take another 60 days of vacation.
Is it the video portion? Because, I mean, we talked about Dr. Dre's history, and he headlined a Super Bowl halftime show. It's Power has a lot
Time
to do
too,
with
though, Mike. It's not that week.
No,
it's not that
well,
day.
that's what I would... I actually think Dana White, outside of the fact that he's actually talking, and he's not serving some sort of punishment that has been mandated, has said generally the right things here. But I would offer to him, what does 30 days or 60 days away from this company do? It would make me somewhat convinced that there are legitimate discussions being had by your partners, by Endeavor, by ESPN, that they're taking this very seriously and they're taking the appropriate time to figure out what they're going to do. And if the end result is you keep your job, fine. But that's what time away does. It at least makes me convinced, because the reason why I thought of that is I was going to ask you guys, is there any scenario where Dana White is still keeping this ship along and those discussions are being had and these things just take time? And Endeavor's trying to figure out, because he's such a cult of personality, because he is the sport, what their next moves are. But then I realized they could do that while he serves a suspension, and it would be a lot more believable.
The shame that Dana White is speaking of there, if there are no bosses, if it's power unchecked, doesn't get to be exacerbated by the further shame of, no, you've embarrassed us. You're gone for 60 days. You don't choose your punishment. We do. You don't choose for the punishment to be good enough at, oh, you're just ashamed and that's the most you're going to be punished. No, you have bosses. You will not do that. We will speak for women, but it's no comment. We will not speak for women. We will speak for money by not speaking at all. We will not, because all the people with power here to punish him could have done it already. I'm telling you, for now, the worst punishment is they delayed Slap League for a week, not canceled it. Slap League. Oh, Dana's got another revenue source, a side gig over there. Again, A man who's on record, Stugotz, saying he wants the largest Las Vegas limit of $1 million per blackjack hand, who is paying his fighters nothing, who is taking that money and putting it at a gambling table, is on video hitting his wife with a whole lot of defenders, and now comfortably getting in front of the cameras with all the promotion that comes for Slap League from him talking about this, and stands in front of you and says, what? You can't punish me. You can't. You're just going to hurt the business. Why would you hurt the business when all you're trying to protect is the business? Like that part has to be seen by everybody. And maybe you don't object. Maybe you see Stephen A. Smith on ESPN also represented by Endeavor, the parent company that is not commenting on owning UFC. And he gets out there with an embarrassing take of he should decide his own punishment. And he gets out there with the embarrassing take of I'm friends with him, so I'm going to come out here on First Take and I'm going to say a couple of things so my company can't keep being accused of not saying anything, but I'm not really saying anything other than I'm friends with him, which is why you get into this situation, Stugotz, where everybody involved is like, we're going to protect Dana White. That's how Dana White gets protected. And if I'm a black person watching that and like, it's really? The privilege is that? That's what privilege looks like. He decides his own punishment. Nobody bothers him, and he gets to decide how ashamed he is. No one else is going to say they're even ashamed. His fighters are going to defend him publicly right and left. His fan base is going to defend him and is going to bend over backwards, Stugotz, with this. What about equality, ladies? She hit him first. That's what you're going to hear again and again and again as this guy, who has very little shame, begs them, please stop doing that. It's gross, man. It's top to bottom disgusting.
It is disgusting. And in terms of Stephen A. Smith, to me, it's kind of two separate things. Stephen A. Smith deserves some level of criticism because he's the guy who criticizes anyone at any turn. And the fact that he's partners and friends with Dana White and kind of letting this slide.
He's the most powerful black voice in sports.
I'm saying he deserves the criticism.
He's the most powerful person. He is the face of ESPN.
Right.
He is a spokesman for black people. His words echo from coast to coast and beyond.
Are his words strong enough, Dan, to make Dana White sit down, reevaluate the situation, and say, hey, you know what? I'm going to step away from the sport for 60 days. The problem is he has no bosses. The only boss that he has no one to answer to, he has shareholders. If that's their decision, they can make that decision. They can speak with their money. They can ask him to walk away for 60 days. I'm not certain. Like, I understand the criticism of Stephen A. Smith, and he should do more, and he should use the platform more. But what's it going to do in the end?
It's going to put pressure on those shareholders.
Okay.
But those shareholders must respond to public pressure.
Okay, but they shouldn't need Stephen A. Smith to put the pressure on Dana White, is my point.
When this started, Stugotz, what did I tell you? I said, let's watch how this is covered, because only if media outrage rises to a certain level does it stay in the news stream long enough for people in power to feel it. ESPN went to it a little late because Damar Hamlin was dominating the coverage. It's understandable.
Yeah, they're covering it right now. It's on Get Up.
Because he's spoken about it is why they're covering it, because he now added a news element to this. I'm just presenting an argument. If he's suspended, he is not being held accountable in front of microphones and having to answer these questions, which would be a convenient part of a suspension for him. He's facing these questions and giving ESPN more reasons to discuss his story by being present, by answering them. The questions you're asking me about Stephen A. Smith, Stugotz, what I told you at the beginning of this, okay, was that without media noise around this, it cannot grow into consequences. It will not grow into consequences. It will not keep people's attention. And when First Take skips past it with Stephen A. Smith saying, he's my friend, let's move on to the next topic of the day.
It doesn't help, yes.
Well, no, but you understand what you're saying now, right? Do you understand where it is?
I've understood what I've been saying the entire time. I'm just like, they shouldn't need... I understand. Keep it in the media, put the pressure on people Who are you actually putting the pressure on? And why are we assuming they don't feel that pressure already? Just because they haven't done anything yet doesn't mean they won't do something at some point.
Well, but now, though, it would be done because there's still in more media pressure. No, Stugotz, what do you mean? They haven't done anything until now, and it would have been pretty easy to do something before now. It would just even hey, sit over there for a little while we figure this out is the bare minimum, but you haven't gotten the bare minimum. You've gotten nobody talking about it because it protects the money in a way that needs to be seen, is what I'm telling the audience, I'm telling you, and I'm telling everybody. Notice all the conflicts and the compromises and where people get protected. Notice what it is that's being protected here and who isn't being protected, who is not being protected.
I understand that. And I would like Stephen A. Smith to use his platform and talk about it, whether he's friends with Dana White or not, and criticize him the way he deserves to be criticized. But I'd also like to think that the people who own stock in that company don't need Stephen A. Smith to make such a rational, easy decision. And the fact that they haven't is disappointing. It's disappointing. It is. But I'm not certain if Stephen A. Smith, as powerful as he is going to get them to change their minds.
Stugotz, but how much moral do you do with your stock? How much more? Stock? You're putting this on stockholders to cost them money, and Endeavor did lose money initially, and then bounce back on what the hit of that was. What are you're asking the stockholders to be responsible for?
You're wondering who his boss is. He doesn't have one. He makes his own rules. They can impact it in a way that we can't, that no one can.
To bring it back to the micro, I think what Stephen A. and anyone on ESPN or anyone on any platform says about this is important, because there are people who are either victims of abuse or who are abusers who hear people making excuses for Dana White's actions. And maybe you can't put pressure on Endeavor, and Stephen A. is certainly not solely responsible for that. But it does matter how you talk about domestic violence on a humongous platform, and you should get criticized if you do that poorly. And I think, you can't overlook that and just say, well, what does it matter if we don't get a 60-day suspension out of it? It matters because people listen to that program who have experienced this in their own lives and care about the way that it's talked about.
I understand that, and I said Stephen A. Smith should be ashamed of himself for not using the platform. Right, I think
Stugotz.
Right,
it's more of a commentary on I think we miss some of that because we're looking for a punishment, and I don't know if he's going to get punished or not. But I think that there's a lot of other important things at stake, which is the way that fans of UFC and fans of sports hear people on TV or on podcasts or in the radio talk about domestic violence, and the way that actually can directly impact you and your actions and the way you think about those things yourself.
I have a question, which is Dana White actually this valuable to this enterprise? Because I don't understand. They can get someone else to, you're not talking about the number one fighter. You're talking about the guy who talks about the fights, who organizes the promotion. I do think that, I'm confused as to why Endeavor thinks that he's this indispensable, that somebody else couldn't run this business.
I would argue that Dana White believes, and I know a lot of people listening to this think that I hate Dana White. If you know the history of this show, I love mixed martial arts, and I was one of the first mainstream supporters of the Carnival Barker coming and being outrageous and selling his silly circus sewage to the masses so that fighting could have another competitor. So for those of you who think I'm biased because I simply hate this man, you would be wrong. This is not personal. It's seeing the evolution of what's happened here, and I believe that job is probably a lot harder than we think it is. I believe that him, as the inventor and founder, probably knows more about the nooks and crannies of how to run, how to get up and running during a pandemic when no one else can. I believe that he is that powerful, and they pay him that way because his value to the company is, I will keep the fighters down, I will not bring in unions, I will continue to keep the price point where it is, I will continue to grow, I will make all the right partnerships. I am the sport. I am the sport. Give me $1 million limit on my blackjack hand at Vegas. I'm the sport. And I don't know that he's wrong because I don't know the intricacies of the business that way. But my guess is if he doesn't suffer any consequences, he's just giving you the truth there when he says, yeah, they can't punish me. I'm the sport. I'm running everything. They don't know how to run it. Ari Emanuel doesn't know how to run this. He can't just get somebody to come run this giant mess of a circus when I'm dominating this sewage business of fighting. No one dominates that. Boxing doesn't get dominated by by one promoter. Boxing has a 70,000 sleazy Dana Whites out there.
Nobody can keep fighter pay as low as me.
That's right. That's
But that
exactly
seems
right.
ridiculous that Dana White is the only one qualified to run UFC, that no one else out there can do what Dana White does, that he has a special set of skills that allows Dana White and only Dana White to be the commissioner of UFC.
Easy to be skeptical there.
Oh, look at the trade papers because Stephanie McMahon is available.